So I think it's about installing that risk, the risk matrix, right? Risk assessment, because the risk assessment for me in security is very standard. I walk through the risk, and then all of a sudden you see a privacy assessment separate from it, and I always find I'm like, well, the two almost lead into each other. They marry each other. On often there's patterns there that I look back and I evaluate software. I evaluate other things for the organization, because you may have a business unit come up to your desk and say, my team would like to purchase this platform. So we start off with our security assessment. But no, within seconds, I'm calling up our privacy office. And I said, can you work with us on this privacy assessment? They said, absolutely. But then they are looking through a different lens, slightly on the legal aspect. And then I'm looking through the analytics lens. I see that even though the legal may say, hey, we approve, or we see that they offer consent. We want to see consent, that we're offering that consent, that whether you deny or accept consent of release of data or to usage of that data, that's one lens that they look through, right? I look at, okay, beyond consent, what is the AI machine learning that we're gathering, or that partner is gathering from us, and using that data beyond the consent? And those are those dark consents you'll start to hear, right? And those dark features and the dark consent, which Google is currently in the news and featured about. So there's that thing I can't separate, right, from our privacy office to our security office. I always want to be entwined, and a part of that is to build that cross-functional team for that privacy and security office. And they are separate, but they are a team that collectively knows what the right and left hand are working and working towards. So most of the training operationally that I see and that I find is I generally ask my team, what lenses are they looking through when they evaluate and when they're building out a security program, and where are the potential threats coming from the privacy and security. And when we're building a program, we're looking at those pillars, and underneath those pillars, we want to make sure that we are that we're grading each one of these platforms, and we're using the privacy patterns, and those patterns that we're evaluating on are documented as well as revisited on an annual basis. So you know that you have a contract, whether that contract is with a service provider, either 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years, we always go back and we're reevaluating with those partners and platforms. I can tell you there's been many conversations where we've stepped in with a couple of our partners and our SaaS partners and et cetera, and they're like, wow, we never thought about that. We need to go back to our privacy office and think about it. And we're probably the worst client, right? And to challenge those platforms and to ask them the right questions in regard to saying, what do you mean by this? And how does it relate back to that requirement for the business? Most of the time, too, is shaping and understanding the business requirements as it relates to what data that they're collecting and how we secure that data, but also how we mask the data and how we anonymize the data. And then what data do we cleanse? A lot of the time, too, and part of the building the security program, you have your different environments. You have your production environment, which is public facing, and that's public and or internal facing for your internal staff and so forth. You have your sandbox, and you also have your dev environment. So you have all these environments. How much data are you collecting into those additional environments? You should not be downloading all the data and having that data populated throughout all these environments. And also who has access to those environments in regards how secure are those environments and public facing and so forth, and network connectivity, infrastructure requirements, all this, stuff. So, in wrap, when I started to work with IAPP, I took my journey on the privacy, and I think I've learned a lot from IAPP, of course, every day. I learn and digest a lot about privacy, but every day we're learning more about security and how the two are blended together. The other interesting part is, in most of the articles I see on the tech side perspective, I see a lot of things about digital transformation and how security is the most important thing, right? And how digital transformation is data and security, but slowly we're starting to see the privacy intertwine in that sentence and in that commonality of saying it is privacy, it is privacy. And just like you, Jonathan, I'm sure Bev, you and Joe here, the panelists, is that we are international organization. I have international experience of operations running operations in GDPR. When I got my debrief on GDPR by our legal professionals here at IAPP, I looked at data and I looked at our initiatives completely different. I looked at data sovereignty. I looked at, hey, how do we separate our instance? How do we separate our O365 instance and keep the data there? How do we? I was always a big encryptor, right? Encrypt at rest, encrypt in transit. I was always like, hey, we got that. But why is the data coming over here when GDPR is stating that, hey, you should really keep that data over there and it should be readable. So I had to laugh. And now, working on the China initiatives, right? And I look at the China laws and then the Brazil law, now soon to be the India law, privacy law, is that I start there and then I look to the security. So I know what I have in the toolbox for security. And security is a very broad and a very standardized best practice, I feel. But privacy, interpretation of privacy can be different for different countries, can be different for different states. And that's a challenge that we have in today's world right now, is that we're coming closer to a more federal, privacy law, which I'm so excited about because it will help these other states. I'm sure it'll help you out, Bev. I'm sure it'll help out Jonathan and Joe and everyone here to say, this is the standard, this is the law, this is the compliance that we can build our programs around. This will help us inject security into that program and standardize. So I can talk with Jonathan, I can talk with Joe, and I can talk to Bev, and we're all on the same plane. And we're working towards the same goal and objectives. I think we are in general, and I think that's that piece why I say that we all can relate to privacy. And I'm very private on Facebook. I have a very small group of people and Instagram and so forth. My friends are my friends. That's why I can relate to privacy so much, because I don't like sharing too much about myself, and I don't like companies sharing it without my consent. I think it is very interesting. I would ask everyone here, and we can do the Q&A, what would be your predictions on privacy in the next 5 years, and in the next 2 years, or within this year? What is your prediction on the role that privacy, we know it plays a very important role in California and some of these states right now that are developing the privacy laws, as well as it's very important for us as leaders in our role to work with, of course, Europe, to work with our certain other countries. It plays a very important role, and our clientele. But I'd ask, it'd be interesting to hear everyone's, it would be very interesting to hear everyone's predictions.